Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Crossroads of Cognizance, the live broadcast where we are talking about all things spiritual, magical, energy work, and the mundane and how these things flow together. We're here to give you a few tips here and there and really just kind of go back and forth on what's going on in our lives, our experiences, and then yours as well. Sometimes we get feedback from you, but we're hoping that this show is really a healing, a shifting, and expanding thing for you as you participate with us. So, welcome back for those who are coming back, and welcome to those who are new with us. And before we do too much of a deep dive, because this show it's going to be fun. We are talking about the law of attraction today. I'm surprised, very much surprised. We have not covered this before. We've touched on it in different ways as everything goes. Nothing is new. But to actually utter the phrase, the law of attraction, and to discuss it, this is the first time we're doing that. So we hope it's a good time. But you need to know who's talking to you about it. And so I am Dahlia Rose. I am the founder of the Conduit School, and I serve my community as a healer, a teacher, and I am a conduit, a channel for high vibrational energies in all of my practices and all of my services. And I do this by guiding my students or my clients through spiritual development. I do energy work, meditation, crystal work, and I counsel here and there. And I put all of these things together so that I can help people transform, become present to who they really are. And my hope is that we expand the way that we look at healing and feel more empowered than we ever thought possible. But I'm never alone on this show, thank God.
You'd do fine if you were. I know you would.
We'll see. But who are you, other magical person here
Right.
who's matched my necklace?
I'm Katrina Raspold, and I am 61, recently retired, and I'm spending this time. Recently retired actually means I work 7 days a week, most hours of the day. But I'm spending time right now trying to figure out who the fuck I am and what I do, and what that looks like now. Because what happens is, for a very long time, I was involved with hands-on retail sales, hands-on healing, where the person's right in front of you and you don't know what's coming in off the street. People are going to pop in and ask you this and ask you that. And people walk in the door weeping and needing, let's just go into the office sort of care. And aside from that, I didn't know what kind of witch I would be. And I didn't know how that was going to manifest. And here we are. We retired October of 22. So we're coming up on a year since we retired. I still am not clear. And poor Dahlia, she does readings for me and she's trying to provide guidance and everything. And I don't even know. And Eric and my husband have very deep talks about this. So when I say who I am and what I do, we're just going to say this is what I am today. And it may or may not be that tomorrow, because things are just shifting and moving and becoming, which is really exciting. And those of you who are of a certain age, who I would say over 50 or 55, you know what it feels where you're kind of settled in who you are and you think that's who you're going to be. And then it shifts and you're not thinking about how that's going to. Anyway, I'm Katrina. What I do is I'm a professional witch. All of my work is now done by remote. So I do cleansings and healings by remote. I do spell work for people by remote. We also make and sell all of our own magical products, including candles that are fixed and empowered for certain purposes. We burn those candles for people and send them to you. And we have lots of other magical products on crossroadsoccult.com. My husband and I have been together for 26 years. We're very tight magical partners. We do a lot of work together. We have been very active in the Sacramento pagan community for 26 years now. And I've lectured all over California. I'm also an author. I've written fiction and nonfiction. And so that's kind of what I do now. That's what I do today. And I'm still trying to see exactly what that looks like. So, when you ask me that kind of loaded question, which I should expect to answer every Thursday, I tell you, it almost feels like every week it's going to change and be something new or different. So you can always find out what I'm doing at KatrinaRaswell.com. I try to keep that at least up to date on where we are now.
I think the opportunity to say who you are each day. I mean, I go through my little spiel because I feel like maybe, who I am each day, much like you, even I'm not retired, but it does change. And it's a gift really in our hustle culture to be able to say, hey, this is not who I am today. And it's bewildering to most, but so wise. And I think pertinent to the conversation that we're having, because who
Agreed.
you are each day may attract something
Mm-hmm.
entirely new and maybe
That's
and
so,
hopefully fun.
yeah. And also the energy of defining who we are draws in so many different components. Numerology, for instance, anybody who has ever changed their name legally so they become, as a legal entity, a different person,
Yeah.
knows that you feel different when you change your name.
I
And
actually had
yeah,
sorry to interrupt. I just
that's
worked
fine.
on
What we
somebody
do.
on God, what day is this? Thursday. So I did a house call on Tuesday, and she had come from Thailand and changed her name in the process. And it was a completely different energy, which was really good because the healing session revealed so much more.
And
But
some of
yeah.
us work under different names than our legal names.
Hmm.
I have not done that. I've always said it was ego, that I want to claim what I'm doing. And what in my world, which not everybody participates in, of a Wicca based paganism, there's a lot of people who use craft names.
Mm.
And so, you got somebody that's like Lord Gwydion Pendragon, but he's actually, Stacy, who runs the copy machine at Kinko's. So, so, they feel different when they're in that persona.
Right.
And yeah, so I really think that how we identify ourselves and the labels we give to ourselves is the beginning of the law of attraction.
Absolutely.
So we're going to look at things in life when we're talking about who we are, people who identify as mother, father, sister, friend, um, nurse, you know, um, bank robber, whatever it is, that the label that you put onto yourself. I am so clumsy. I am, oh God, that was such a stupid thing to do. I can't believe I'm so dumb. The labels we apply to ourselves become the energy that we wear. And the labels that we allow other people to apply to us that we accept
Hmm.
become the energy that we wear. And that turns into that Velcro effect. Uh, I've always said that, we attract to us, because of confirmational biases, the people and the situations that support our narrative about ourselves. And I'm not saying that every bad thing that happens to somebody that they caused it. Life happens in the midst of all of this law of attraction. Life happens, and life is always not rewarding or pleasant. But I'm talking about on a day to day, what we surround ourselves with is really very based on how we see ourselves and um, how we identify, I believe.
Well, there's also the added what it does to your psyche, right? To add to how things are materializing in your everyday life. I mean, science aside, so if you're not going to buy into, say, theories like the law of attraction, you can go into the scientific realm and see how clutter affects you
Oh, yeah.
psychologically in terms of your clarity, or um, color and marketing psychology is a huge realm of how does this thing that is in front of you impact you on the inside, and from the inside out, what personal meaning do you carry for such things? So we are attracting on multiple levels at any given time, psychologically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and it's all coalescing into what we call life. And, the law of attraction is an attempt, it seems to me, is an attempt to boil that complexity down into a simple phrase that encourages you to empower yourself to do something different. Now, it has harmful aspects as well because it does not account for anybody who's disenfranchised or otherwise because of something they were born into. The law of attraction cannot necessarily be applied in those circumstances. Or if you try, you can do some serious damage. But maybe
Yeah.
it's worth kind of going over what the law of attraction actually is, like how it's defined. And surprisingly, I was looking when we came to this topic, I was looking over the history of me and I was like, I don't know that I've ever directly engaged with the law of attraction. It's been happenstance. I understand the vibration and the frequency aspects of things. And yes, I know how to manifest and how to show others to do it and what have you. But I actually had to sit down and look it up. And I found a definition that from the law of attraction.com. So I'll read this little spliff here. The law of attraction defines your ability to attract into your life what you focus on. Whatever you can imagine is achievable if you take action on a plan to get to where you. If you take action on a plan to get to where you want to be. The true definition of the law of attraction is like attracts like. Whatever you give your emotional energy and attention to is what will come back to you. So that was just from that little website, and great definition. Like I said, simplicity, because it's so much more complex than that.
Yeah.
um, so from there, the conversation becomes, well, how do I apply this to my life? How do I work with it from that place of understanding?
And how do we make it not dangerous is the other question.
Right.
So the biggest, so I'm going to start with how not to work with it. Because the greatest example we can see of misuse of law of attraction is it started out as a motivational group and became cult status, and that's
Mm.
Nexium. And in their training, which originally was a training that was to bring out your best self, to optimize your best qualities, and to have your best life, the idea was radical accountability. And it was saying if something bad happens to you, or if you are having a negative or a bad experience, you have done something to draw that in. You have created that situation. And that set up the idea for the cultist behavior of it by saying, if something we're doing is making you uncomfortable, it's because you're being triggered with,
And there was so many abuses in there.
it was horribly abusive. And a supreme narcissist was leading the group, and with sociopathic tendencies, which tends to be the way cult leaders respond. But that the idea really got shifted and bastardized. Now, when it came out, we got really excited because it was during a time when energetic behaviors and the influence of energy on behavior was just starting to get its groove and to be a very exciting thing to talk about. Now, the idea had been there forever, but we got a sudden rush of things like Course in Miracles by Marianne Williamson. We had The Secret come out. The Celestine prophecy carried some parts of this, but that was more about a predestiny contract.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had this rush of what sounded like mainstream, almost bougie kind of uh, magical or energetic ideas coming forth as part of a new age premise that were very appealing to people. People love the idea of accountability because that gives us control. When we are accountable for what happens in our world, it gives us a sense of control of I have choices and I can control or manage what's happening around me based on my energy. So people got very excited about this. And we love things like the laws of attraction because that sounds so absolute and it
Yeah.
sounds like the commandments, like this is real. You can take this to the bank. You know, there are no laws of attraction except like the laws of um, energy conservation by Newton or something. You know, it's the
Right.
same idea. It's the theory that we have that we're operating from at this time. And so the way not to work with it is absolute. I don't think we should work in absolute positions on any type of energetic work and say this is always the way it is or this is the way everything works, because it rarely is. There's always an exception to the rule, and that's why we have this wonderful thing called chaos magic. But with laws of attraction specifically, because it states that we can change our experience and our future and our environment by changing how our energy is going out there and what messages we're conveying into the world, um, it does give a lot of power. And so it became very effective. And there are I'm like my mother would say, I'm telling you that to tell you this. There are certain ways to work with it that are exceptionally effective. Now, Dahlia and I see in our practice every day ways that we can step back objectively, hear what a client's describing, and see how they are creating their own experience, that they are duplicating very specific negative patterns by putting something out there into the world. um, Profound loneliness, desperation for a relationship, a poverty mindset, different keywords like that, that are creating the Velcro that's attracting what they're experiencing. And we can see this. You can do an experiment with this. I mean, you can go into the store, spend a half an hour in any store, and I'm talking anywhere from Walmart to the grocery store or whatever, Home Depot. Go into the store, but before you do that, sit in the car for 5 minutes and program your behavior and your attitude. Sit there and say, oh my God, I hate the Home Depot. Every time I go in here, it's hard for me to find help. I can't reach any of the shit on the shelves. There's too much stuff here. I get overwhelmed. And I just need a fucking screwdriver, man. That's all I need, you know. So I can sit there and I can be angry and I can have a negative opinion of the store and the people that work there and the inventory they carry. And I can just go into this store with a dark cloud over my head and try to find that screwdriver. And I'm going to have a hard time. I'm probably not going to have a positive experience in that store that will unseat me from the attitude I developed and carried into there. I'm probably, in fact, going to come out of that store with that attitude galvanized and reinforced and intensified. Now, part of that is because I actually genuinely hate the Home Depot, but I'm just using that as an example. I could do the same thing with a store I love. I could just say, you know, there are bad things about this place. I'm going to focus on those. I'm going to talk about how every time I go in here, the people look scummy. They look like somebody I want to run from in a dark alley. They bang into my cart. They're going the wrong way in the aisle. There aren't enough lanes open. I can sit here and just negatively program what that experience is going to be. And I can go in there with a frown on my face and a cloud in my heart and have a terrible experience. Likewise, I can sit in the car and say, I am so grateful to be here. Look at this. I got a parking place right up front. I hit all the green lights on the way here. Today is blessed. I'm going to go in there and find exactly what I want. If I can't find what I want, I'm going to find something better. I am so excited to be here. I'm so excited to have enough money that I can get what I need. And I'm hope that I see some people that I know in there that I like, that I haven't seen in a long time. You can really build up the pleasantness of the experience and go in there and have a good day. And there's times you can change how somebody else is viewing that place. I mean, I've been in line and, somebody in front is paying for something with WIC or has coupons that have expired, or they're writing a check, or something's taken a long time. They need to send something back. And you'll have 4 or 5 people in line and they're all looking back at each other with the smirk, fucking figures, doesn't it? And you can say something like, I know how it feels to be there. Boy, I've been there in that position so many times and it's so uncomfortable. I really hope everything works out for them. And make them feel like jackasses for how they're behaving. And it can lift the energy that they're putting out there. If you get to a clerk who's just slamming the stuff down the belt and in a bad mood, and the managers come up and said something in their ear and they're just rolling their eyes and walking away, if you look at them and you say, it looks like you're having a really hard day, I really hope it gets better, bless your heart, it tends to let them know that, hey, I see you and I feel you, and that's a hard place to be. So all of that long ass thing is a way of saying those are examples of laws of attraction that we use all the time. And those are ways that we can program laws of attraction to work for us in a positive way. I mean, if you have a fight with your partner and you're feeling all out of sorts, how many times the rest of that day do you feel victimized, or do you feel like the whole world's against you? Whereas if you wake up in the morning and you had a really great dream and boy, you slept great and everything's just going good, things tend to flow well for the rest of the day. That's what I
Absolutely.
got on.
I when I think of the law of attraction, what comes to mind is when we're doing, or I would say at least when I'm doing healing sessions, and I'm trying to think of the vibration I need to hold for the person, or if I'm aware of uh, a conversation that I need to have with their energy, their cells, their muscles, where a trauma happened, where a wound happened, and attracting healing energy. I know that, like, when it comes to energy work and like even readings, people tend to have this idea that, oh, you might attract something out of the ordinary, and truly where your focus is what ends up arriving. So if you are in a place of service, you are going to attract energies of service, and service in a positive way, preferably. Same thing with the readings. If you are in a place of, I need to know what this is because I need to negatively impact the situation or control things, then yeah, your readings are eventually going to be something that drains you. And I'm not here to say, oh, you've attracted this negative thing or you can get possessed or whatever. That's not the conversation. It is simply that return of the dark cloud that starts to drain your energy field to feed itself. And that is, you keep attracting circumstances, then you will go on to attract people that will do the same to you, drain you, or sort of share in that negative experience with you. And and then it's a vicious cycle. It is the Ouroboros, the snake eating its
Mm-hmm.
own tail at that point. So the law of attraction, like the law, the definition of it permeates everything. It's funny you talk about how much we love laws, and as I was reading different things about where it came from and things like that, it has a basis in religious texts, like the people who have decided that this is a law for humanity, and so many have accepted it. I really believe that our collective has made it into something very powerful, because that's what our brains and our we're very special beings in that way. Um, it becomes a basis of belief and control uh, that can have religious underpinnings. Like if you're not a good person, then you will not have good things. When we can see examples of the opposite. And then Hermeticism was mentioned as well, which I love. Hermetics and all things that. So I was a little disappointed it was woven in with religion, but that's okay. um, the law of attraction's makeup has come from those things. So even if you don't believe the letter of the law, this is a conversation to say it permeates your life in ways you may not expect. So those were.
You know, when you talk about the influx of religion into this, I think that most standardized religion has some form of this. You know, in
Yes.
Wicca, it's the threefold law. Everything that you put out there is going to come back to you threefold. Uh, Biblical sources say this as well. You know, bread thrown upon the water of life will come back threefold, is one of the
Mhm.
Bible verses. And you know, the thing is, when we talk about, when I say we love laws, we might not love legislature, but we love for things to be true. We just scramble for anything that we can depend on to be true. The law of gravity. We enjoy knowing that, you know, if we trip, we're going to fall on the ground because gravity is going to hold us to the earth. So we like things that we can depend on, even if it's an inconvenience, that it's true.
Yeah.
And yeah, so um, it's sometimes inconvenient that the law of attraction is there, but we want to believe something to be true. And in matters of spirit, we all just scramble for something to hold on to, something that's universal, something that is a truth. One of the things that I would say is one of the times when even mundane people really see the effects of the law of attraction is when we're out somewhere, we see somebody we think we recognize. I think that's so and so from high school. Or is that Jeannie who lives down the block? I think it is. And we see them and it turns out not to be them. And we feel all ignorant and everything. But then within 24, 36 hours, we hear from that person, or we find out that person died, or, you know, we somehow have a real connection with that person. And I think that what happened is law of attraction put this other person in our path to create the Velcro, so to speak, that's going to draw that information to us or that experience to us. And I hear people doing that all the time. You know, then you see Jeannie the next day. It's like, hey, I just thought I saw you and it wasn't you. So, we also, another thing about when you're talking about the energies that surround us and how they affect us as healers and people who work with the energy of others, one of the things I've always taught my students is you've got to be so careful about the energy you're putting around yourself or allowing around yourself when you're working on other people's energy.
Mm-hmm.
And people do not usually come to us when things are going well. They most often will come to us amid some kind of crisis. And so they're depending on no cross contamination to happen, even though they don't know they need to be worried about that. But they're expecting that they're coming into a safe place. And part of that being a safe place is us being responsible for the energy we're allowing to collect around us. So if we have an argument with our best friend that morning and it really troubles us, and we go into work, so to speak, and we're seeing clients after having a trauma, no matter how much we try to compartmentalize, which we all do,
Mm-hmm.
that is going to be part of our energetic framework. And we are then working on a client with that contamination in there. And that's why it's so important that people who do work energetically with other people either excuse themselves from work and just make the phone calls and say, I have had some stuff going on. I'm not in a good place to work on people right now. I want to make sure I give you the best care I can so I can see you
Right.
tomorrow afternoon or whatever that might be. Or you go through the healing process rapid fire and take some time to just process what's happened and find a safe place to put it. You don't ever just push it away and say, I'm going to deal with that later because I got clients now, because it will come out and it will bite you in your ass. So
Absolutely. Every time.
just got to be tuned to that. And, it's the same way when you have children. When you have children, you're getting into their energy. And if you have something that happens that has you upset, oh, those little suckers know immediately.
Yep.
And when you're compromised, they feel the lack of safety.
Yep. Can't tell you how many times my little 6-year-old just, they don't even have to say anything. They just come over. So he'll just come over and sit in my lap. And he's like, we need to be together right now. And, for the sake of conversation, I'm not the most hands-on kind of person. And so he is just like, listen, we need affection right now.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they definitely know. Pets are the same. If you don't have
Mm-hmm.
hairless children, they are, pets will know. Pets know everything. In thinking about the law of attraction, I was in my head yesterday getting um, uh, angel numbers. I'm so sick of calling them angel numbers, like repeat numbers, synchronistic numbers, all over the place. And I was like, there's an argument here to say I'm looking for them and therefore they are showing up. And if I took that argument, then I'm exercising the law of attraction. I want to see them. I want to receive a message, some level of validation from these things. And that's where it stops. And so for me, with the law of attraction, like there's this, it can almost be, it's empowering and a little bit disheartening at times because there's a part of me that wants to believe in the magic of it just could happen, not because I'm wanting it to. And then I took that and I put it in a blender and I decided that the law of attraction, as far as what we're talking about, it's an opportunity to see where you are. So if I'm driving around and seeing these numbers and I happen to know what the numbers mean, rather than just taking it on the chin and saying, oh, the angels must love me today, or I didn't see any, so they must be upset with me for the thing I didn't do, I can say, okay, well, I'm seeing sevens, and I know that if I start putting my hands to whatever work, that it will be successful. Or I'm seeing ones and I've been in a really negative place. I need to watch my thoughts because I'm creating instantaneously, or whatever the case may be. Not only is the law of attraction an opportunity, because it seems like a controlled opportunity to manifest different in your world, but it can also be this where am I moment. And from there, do I stay here? Can I make this a part of my healing process? So I may see sevens and not be working on anything, but be reminded that I have the power to do so. It's beautiful and terrible all at once.
But here's the good part of that. Any of those cues that you give yourself as a result of seeing the sevens or seeing the ones, whether it's contrived
Mhm.
or whether it's because you're filtering for it or whether it's universally contrived or whatever it might be, the messages you're giving yourself can only help.
True.
And so it's not creating anything negative. It's only refining what's already there. And so I definitely see it as a positive. And also, it's just, we cannot seem to, at least at this point in history, escape the fact that anything done in spirit always requires some modicum of faith. It
Sure.
just always does. And I would love for spirituality to become science. I would love for us to just figure it all out. What is God and how did God get here? And, why do we even have a God? And did we make all this shit up, or did God make us up, or what happened? I would love to just have that all in a science book. No, this, and this. People need gods, and therefore people created a god, and it was all a thought form. Or, as you and Eric discussed, our gods were people who created us, and then like guppies fucked right off and left us here on this planet. Whatever it looks like, just have it be said, this is what happened. That'd be great. We're not there. We're still at a place where we still have to have some things happen on faith. And when you're talking about the sevens and the repeating numbers and that sort of thing, it makes me think about what we do in regard to the eggs and in regard to the candles, which is when people look at the candle burns and we read the candle burns and we say, wow, there's a lot of black soot on this candle. That means there's resistance. That means that either you're resisting the energy that we're putting out there, or someone else is, or the universe is, but for whatever reason, it's not well received. There's the other side of that, which is, okay, so we got black soot. Does that mean the person who fixed the candle put too much sympathetic oil in it? Does it mean that you used a different type of herb in it that caused all this black soot? Does it mean that the paraffin that made the candle was a bad mix and is creating all this black smoke? Does it mean that the wick scooted over or melted aside or was put in there incorrectly? Or maybe even the wick was of a different kind of material than what we're used to and burned black. Science doesn't stop being a thing just because we're using a product for witchcraft.
Right.
And so there are scientific causes for why the omens and the guidance in the candle read come up. That doesn't change the message. Our question then becomes, okay, so it was the oil content of this candle that caused the black soot. Why did it happen on this candle for this intention? To give us
This is the
this
conversation
message.
that me and my partner have all the time. He'll get like a black soot candle or something like that, and he's like, no, it's got to be that the wick was leaning, and I'm like, but why that wick, why today? And it just annoys the crap out of him, because he's like, no, it's got to be something else. If it's bad, it's got to be something else. He's getting better.
And what's
about
funny,
that.
when the science comes into play during the burn, people want to get in there and jack around with the candle. Oh gosh, I'm getting black soot. I better get in there and move the wick or pour off some of the wax or whatever it might be. And that's a control freak right there. That's somebody's trying to control the outcome rather than be receptive and just sit back and take the information that comes from it. And so, it's the same thing with the numbers. I think that there comes a time, like you have done and like you tend to do, where we understand that we might be filtering, but why are we filtering?
Right, right. Why is my mind in this place? And now I'm seeing a reflection of that through my environment. Numbers, animals, you name it. And this is where I think the law of attraction attempts to push us towards is like that awareness. And yet it's been abused to say, oh, well, if you keep attracting emotionally unavailable people in your life, it must be because you're emotionally unavailable. And it's like, well, it could be a lot of things. It could be, uh, I don't know, the circumstance of which, like how you grew up and you just think that's normal. It could be, there's something else while you were talking earlier where I was questioning, what was it? If you are in a negative circumstance, oh, this is one of the things that I've considered when it comes to like soul contracts and things like that. What if it's not that you attracted the negative circumstance, but because of negative thinking, but because you wanted to heal it. And the only way to heal it was in the presence of the negativity. And then from there it went south. I mean, we don't know. Life is far too complex to just simply say, well, you attracted that and that's what happened. And
I
now we're
agree.
blaming the victim.
I agree. And it goes into, I have trouble with any religious premise that includes the term, but not that.
Mm,
So when I see a lot of people, and I'm just going to hang this right out on the dirty laundry rack, when I see people that, particularly in the Christian religion, are kind of cherry picking, and they
mm,
say, "No, I'm a Christian. The Christians are good people," and they, largely are. I I'm a good person, therefore I am a Christian.
mm,
And then you start talking to them about things that are in the Bible that are really very repugnant as far as the treatment of other people. And they're like,
mhm.
oh, but not that. I believe in the Bible completely, but not that.
It was an
And
allegory.
yes, yes. And often the Bible is all allegory, but I mean, we still have a lot of degradation of women and mistreatment of women and mistreatment of other faiths, and it gets really ugly in places. And so people will cherry pick the Bible and say, "I love the parts about love your neighbor as yourself," and uh, the nice things, but the things that are ugly, I'm just going to say not that. That I don't believe that, or I don't endorse that. And that was actually, to a little Katrina information, why I ended up leaving the Christian churches. I could
Mm,
not follow a path that I could not embrace in its entirety.
interesting.
And so, with this idea of laws of attraction, there is a lot of application of, but not that. So you get people who are saying, yes, we absolutely create our own reality. We absolutely draw to us the experiences we need to have. We have soul contracts that tell us that we need to, have this experience in order to develop. But that little child that got abused, not that. That little child didn't earn that. That
Right.
elderly woman who had dementia, who was attacked, not that. She didn't attract that. And so we get into this cherry picking thing where we say this and not that, rather than I can embrace this thought. So, one of the reasons I wanted to even talk about laws of attraction is that duality, that even as responsible spiritual people, we tend to do.
Mm. Yeah, in the beginning parts of, I think we had I was going to say in the beginning parts of spiritual journey, especially, we can sort of lose our way with that whole, I must have attracted this. And we had a conversation about, I want to say it was about ancestors or something like that. And some folks were presenting how they felt guilty about different things and weren't able to let go of their past, and therefore, negative occurrences continue to happen. And if you take the law of attraction at face value, it can really do some damage in a situation like that. Versus, um, what about you've outgrown your circumstances, and because you remain there, it becomes untenable. And so, therefore, everything feels terrible. It's not actually happening in a terrible way, but it's just that you can't stand it anymore. And so, from there, if you moved, if you would start to attract new circumstances, but really it is that your framework would be different because it had to
It
be.
it's so easy to get into that negative loop too. And there's an internet meme that I love, which is, it references the idea of when you're upset with someone, or you have just decided you don't like somebody, they don't fit in your life anymore, you don't want anything to do with them anymore, everything they do becomes an offense.
Yeah.
And the internet meme is two women talking like, look at that bitch, look at how she's eating crackers over there. It just
I've
becomes
seen the
this.
same one for Virgos. Like,
Yeah.
I love you, honey. I hate the way you chew toast, you know?
Yes. And so the littlest things can start to create a negative energy around people who may or may not deserve that, or
Right.
situations, jobs that may or may not deserve that. I kind of tease my son a little bit because the second he decides he does not like something about a job, I'll give it 2 weeks and that job will go away. It can be the best job on earth, but if he decides he doesn't like somebody there because they've treated him poorly and he can't get past that, or there's some aspect of the job that suddenly becomes untenable to him that wasn't a problem a week ago, he will stew that up in his head until that job is just gone. And people do that, boy, they just amplify. And that's another form of law of attraction, is that when you begin to indulge down that path of what is bad about this situation, there will always be things. What's bad
Mhm.
about this situation, it will just eat you. And more things that are bad will start to become very visible, very apparent to you. You can see it more. So, in a way, laws of attraction is very much about filtering, like you mentioned.
Yes, yes. A lot of the tenets in there encourage you to do something different, to have new circumstances, but they're not, at least from what I saw, it's not so much it says to take action, but I did not see it say to take action on the thing you have a problem with. It was more like embrace gratitude, understand that these are the kind of circumstances that don't work.
That's so
Visualize
precious.
newness.
That's so precious and
Surrender.
passive.
Right,
That's
right.
inaction, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So much for attract. Well, I guess that's the point, right? You're attracting it, but you can't do anything about it. Just attract
Right,
it.
right. And so there's, I don't know, I'm going to go all full on geek now. There's I think it was Star Trek Next Generation. It may have been first original series, but they had basically an extraterrestrial entity that had connected itself to the ship and was causing all these problems on the ship.
Mhm.
And they were able to deduce that it was getting something from the ship. They changed the formula of what was on the ship and the thing went away. And somebody said, you soured the milk. And so a lot of times part of releasing something you're drawing in by law of attraction that you don't want to have there is to change your own dynamic so that it isn't feeding what's bringing that in.
I mean, that makes entire sense. And sometimes, if you're trying to attract money, you need to pay the bill. Like you need to look at you're overspending. You know what I mean? Like at that point, it's not, oh, well, I must not be attracting wealth and abundance. It's like, no, every time you get a check, you drop $1,000 on something that is not going to change your life.
And personal accountability is a huge part, I think, of law of attraction.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, I tell this story a lot. I love my cousin to death. I had a conversation with her one time where she said to me, why are all the men I meet and I'm attracted to and I enjoy being with alcoholics? And to me, it's very obvious. And I say, because you pick them up in bars. You're not meeting men in libraries, and
Right.
they're bookophiles or, bibliophiles. You know, you're picking them up in bars and they're alcoholics. Big surprise. And a lot of times, I don't have any money, so I must not be, putting out the energy to bring in money. You have money, you have a problem with spending.
Right.
Or we talked about this before, you have a relationship with poverty.
Yeah.
And you have to change the dynamic of the relationship with poverty in order to get money. And I hate that idea of, well, you millennials could have the house you want if you just stop buying all those damn lattes. No, it's not that.
It's
It
not
isn't
that
that.
at all.
No, the economy's jacked. That's true. That's a real thing.
Right.
But
And
I
it took
do,
COVID to show everybody it's not the
right.
millennial problem.
But I do genuinely have people come to me that can't see that, the reason they're not making a lot of money is they're paying me $1,000 a month to burn candles.
Ta-da!
Right?
answer,
Love
answer
you.
divine.
Yeah. So it's a matter of, connecting the dots. And I like to be the person that leads that process of not you. If you just say it, it doesn't work. You
Right,
have to, you have to guide them to that point. And it's difficult because it's judgy and it's shitty and it feels uncomfortable when you know a fact about somebody and how they could make everything okay, but they're not able for whatever reason to take that step.
right. And for the whole of this conversation, right, I think what we're sort of talking about is the fact that it's law of attraction is not one size fits all. And yet it has its usefulness because we're already operating in it, whether we're doing so consciously or unconsciously.
Yeah.
And our obligation is to become aware of where we are with regard to the law of attraction as it's happening. So if you are disenfranchised, no, a gratitude journal is not going to bring you what you want. You're not going to start attracting circumstances. But if you, I don't know, apply for the assistance, the aid to change your circumstance, you then attract the healing necessary to get you out of generational curses where your family may have been impoverished and it was shameful to ask for help, so on and
Yes.
so forth. Or if you are trying to heal from trauma, it's not necessarily that you attracted the traumatic circumstance, but you do need opportunities to heal. And here's several iterations of that gone right or wrong. It's all over the place for me. And I think if you only focus on the law of attraction, in my opinion, there's a lot of opportunity to have a positive mindset about life. And if you find that you fall in a trap or you fall down and you're like, well, the law of attraction has betrayed me. No, wait, hold there for a moment. And maybe it's not for you to attract anything in that moment, but just to observe it.
I
Um,
think sit with that thought. If you're
yeah,
starting to beat yourself up about what you're attracting into your life, like you said, put the brakes on and stop and say, does that feel authentic to me? Or does that
mhm,
feel like something I've been told I should feel or think?
yeah,
And that's not to say that everybody can change the set of circumstances they're born into, the reactions to the trauma that they experience.
right.
Not everybody can do that. And your ability to work around those things becomes the challenge.
And even if
So,
you are, oh, go ahead.
no, go.
I was going to say, even if you have the ability to change that set of circumstances, it's not a switch flip. There's time.
Yeah. And there's no requirement. A lot of times I see people that, for instance, the trauma bubbles that come up in the egg. The
Hmm.
trauma bubble is explaining there is a past trauma that you have not reconciled or put to peace that still affects how you engage the world. It's not a judgment. It's not saying, and you need to fix this. It's saying right now, there is an opportunity for you to heal that if you choose to.
Yep.
And so it's not a dictate ever that you have to fix something. It's an awareness that the opportunity is there.
It's very, it's opportunity is one of our greatest, like above all species. Opportunity is something that I think humans don't really realize the value of, because everything must be good, bad, or punishment or reward. And yet each moment, even when you just have a thought, even if you find that you're receiving this amount of feedback or attracting these situations in your life, is just an opportunity. I love it when people say, I want something different in my life, and then it shows up and they go, no. Like,
Yeah.
I was comfortable with the old. That's what I like. I mean, and I can say
Mhm.
that of myself. Opportunities show up and I'm like, I'm more comfortable behind the scenes. I don't know if I really want
Yeah.
this, when I know different, even
Yeah.
today in this day and
Some
age.
people like to chase. So
Yes.
they want this job,
Yeah.
they want this job, they want this job. When they don't really want that job, they want to be offered that job.
Mm-hmm. I don't want
They
to go to the
don't,
party. I
they
just want the invitation.
right. They pursue and they pursue and they pursue getting their ex back. They get their ex back and realize why that's their ex. And
It's crazy.
it
But it's all
is.
opportunity. And the law of attraction can be helpful. Just don't get stuck in the pits of, I created this and now I'm suffering, because it's not
I think
helpful.
use it as a premise, but not as a way of life.
Mm,
Accept it
absolutely.
just as we do the other things, as this is a thing that generally happens, but there are exceptions that prove the rule.
Mm-hmm.
It's just part
Absolutely.
of that huge puzzle of shit we do not understand at all.
That's all we talk about is shit on this show.
That should be the name of the show. Shit we
Shit
do
we
not
do
understand and talk about nonetheless.
not. Well, that's just, if again, this is one of those t-shirts moments. Like, I feel like we should have show t-shirts, and they're going to be everything that you say, Katrina, because it's always profound.
Oh no, you're doing fine.
But you know, it would be interesting to hear from you all either how the law of attraction has played out in your life, or how you feel about it. Is it something you regularly use, or is it something you just dismiss as, another one of those woo woo, new agey concepts? Whatever and however you feel about it. Uh, we'd love to hear from you. So drop that in the comments. We'll see them after the show too. But we are at that power hour where we are going away for a week, and we will see you next time on Crossroads of Cognizance. Good night, everybody.